My son went away to camp a couple weeks ago, and it was his first time away at an overnight camp.
How old is he?
He is
what a
8.
Special thing.
And this is the first child that we've had that has gone away to camp. Us as parents were kind of nervous. However, he came back from camp, and he's like this more mature kid.
Yeah.
He went away and had responsibility, and now we're seeing him, and it's almost like this developmental leap of maturity has suddenly blossomed in him.
That's awesome.
He's calling you father. Father. And he's got like a little bit of a British accent, which is a little odd because the camp was in Alabama.
He did ask if if he could call my wife mom instead of mommy, and she said, "Yeah, you can if you want to. If you want." He goes, "It feels weird. I don't think I want to."
Yeah.
So not yet. But it is just joyful to see him take on a higher level of responsibility.
That's awesome.
That explains that cracking sound that I heard a while back. It was your wife's heart breaking when her son said, "I don't want to call you mommy anymore." Welcome to the Sex Life Science Podcast, where we talk about everything in life from sex to science. I'm Dr. Justin Gregory Briggs, LMFT, and I have a Ph.D. in Human Development and Family Studies from Purdue University and a Master's of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from Northwestern University. My co-hosts today are psychotherapists and marriage and family therapists Seth Frank, Perry Lyons, and Dr. Dave Morgan. Today's episode is on affirmation. From the therapy couch to the kitchen table to the bedroom, we explore how affirmation influences mental health, parenting, and relationships. This podcast is intended for adult audiences and may discuss sensitive topics that are not suitable for all listeners. The content of this podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. We aim to help you make informed decisions based on evidence-based practices, sound theory, and research. However, remember that science is continually evolving and individual experiences can vary widely. In any discussions of our clinical work, we maintain strict confidentiality and ethics, using only altered or hypothetical case examples. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for medical, mental health, or relationship care, and we encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for personalized treatment. What comes to mind when you think about affirmation? What stories do you have about that?
It's not so much a story, but when I first thought about the topic of affirmation, I thought about all of these statements where you may be asked to sign your name to something. You know, I affirm this statement. Some places require that for hiring. Do you agree to certain values that
our company
shares, right? Or that this school shares, or when we enter into a contract with another party. So my first thought was, what do I sign? What do I assign my name to?
Yeah.
That's one way of thinking about what I affirm.
And that really speaks to the seriousness of what an affirmation is.
Absolutely.
Like that's part of a contract. That's a binding statement. You're saying, I think this thing is true or a good idea, or I'm on board with that. Yeah, that's a big and heavy weight there.
It is.
I was watching How to Train Your Dragon recently, and I love that movie.
The animated one or the new one that's kind of animated, kind of not?
I'm totally surprised by this, but yes, both of them. I like the live action one.
Oh,
I think
wow.
all the additions they make to it really work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I was prepared to hate that. But
I was too.
Now I'm going to go in with a little more optimism. I tend to not be a fan of the remake, but every once in a while you get a true grit.
Yeah. I'm the same. I'm like, I've seen this before. I could just go watch the original, but they do a really good job with it. So if it's something you want to take your kids to, hey, great opportunity. But in this scene I'm thinking of, Hiccup, the main character, is really down because he's just kind of failed everything. And his friend Astrid comes up to him and says, yeah, you have lost your community. You've lost everything. But you're also the first to ever ride a dragon. And that affirmation right there is the first time in the entire movie anyone says anything positive about Hiccup.
Yeah.
And it turns him around and gives him that hope again.
Yeah. I think of love languages and we talk about words of affirmation.
Sure.
And those mean probably something to everybody. But even if it's your 5th place love language, you still like to hear it. You know, my 5th place love language is gifts If you never got me another gift, I probably wouldn't notice. But if you give me a gift, I'm not going to be like, what is this garbage? Get it out of here, right? Like, this is my 5th place love language, right? I'm assuming for 5th place affirmations on the love language list, they're probably similar. But I'm a big words of affirmation guy. It's probably my number 1, just reattestations of like love, care, commitment, attraction. Those just make me feel connected to my spouse, or when my kids will say something like that. It's just that binding moment. And I want to be clear, like, this is not something that I need for self-worth, but it's just that affirmation that I love you, I care about you, I'm committed to you. Right. It helps connect you in relationship with whoever is saying it, unless it's socially inappropriate, the stranger down the street, the new employee, I love you, Perry. Okay, like that would be a little weird. But if we're not
yes, it would.
So socially appropriate contexts only.
Yeah.
Hearing something like that is connecting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think of it also in the negative sense. Sometimes it comes up with Stuart Smalley and SNL, and I forget exactly what he says.
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your era.
That's
of SNL.
Lauren Michaels says that everybody thinks the best era was probably around the time they were junior high, maybe.
Junior high to high school.
Junior high to high school. I'm not sure if that lines up with my junior high to high school years, but I remember that skit well.
Yeah, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
And I think that has created kind of a negative connotation to affirmation as well. That people are like, just saying stuff to yourself, what is that going to help?
Yeah. Yeah, which kind of leads us into defining affirmation. So affirmation is stating something as a fact. This includes declaring support for an affirmation made by somebody else, but you're saying something that you think is true, or you're affirming something that somebody else said is true. So Cohen defines affirmation as offering support and or asserting something as fact. So person A is stating something as factual about person B, or agrees with an assertion made by person B. So Dave, you are over 6 feet.
Correct.
I made a statement. Dave affirmed my statement.
Yes.
Right. And that's a real important element because we're differentiating between understanding. I might be able to understand somebody's perspective, but I'm not necessarily going to affirm it as true. But I can understand how they came to that conclusion. It's not empathy. It's not empathizing with somebody's emotional experience. Sometimes somebody can share an emotional experience with us and we will feel a degree of what they're feeling. But I'm not necessarily saying that I agree that maybe the intensity of your emotion is appropriate, for example. Like we deal with that a lot clinically. But when we are defining affirmation, what are kind of the high points that you want to be hitting with your clients or in discussion or keep in mind for yourself?
For me, is this true, which you've already alluded to.
Why is that so important?
Well, in our work with clients, we're often on the lookout for what we would refer to as negative distortions, cognitive distortions. And I know that's been talked about in other episodes of this podcast. We don't want to just replace negative distortions with positive distortions.
Yeah.
Here's negative things I believe about myself
You're
that
not the
aren't
worst
true.
person in the world. You're the greatest person who has ever lived on planet Earth.
Exactly. And that can be just as much of a distortion as the negative belief. And so it's not that we're encouraging clients, replace this negative distortion with a more positive distortion. We're challenging our clients with what's the truth. So that search for the truth is a really important part of what's worthy of affirmation.
Yeah, because if you think about the utility of affirmations in a positive sense in psychology, it's to provide grounding and stability and reality to help me to weather the emotions that I am inevitably going to feel that are going to challenge those things that I'm affirming. And so even, for example, clients who they'll tell me, well, at least I can fall back on the fact that I'm a good person. I'm like, well, what about when you're not a good person? I do bad things, and I know you probably do too. What do you think is something that is true consistently, that you can consistently affirm about yourself, about reality that's going to get you through? Well, it's that I'm valuable, that I'm lovable, that I'm worthy. It's like, there we go.
Yeah.
That's something that it's not going to change based on your emotions, even based on your actions. And so that's a great utility of affirmation, I think.
Yeah. And that's a really good point you're making, because if you're struggling with something like anxiety or depression and you've had a stretch of good behavior, say, and all of a sudden you do make a mistake, you call the name or you don't show up for the loved one the way that you should have, that could be a real spiral moment, because anxiety and depression will then make that even bigger than the mistake already was.
Exactly.
And oh my gosh, this affirmation, I'm a good person. Well, of course I'm not a good person, but grounding in inherent value. I'm valuable. I'm imperfect. I'm progressing. I'm growing. I'm accountable. Those are all things that can be true and affirming statements that give us stable footing, even when we've just made a mistake.
Right. Affirmation is not just fluffing yourself up to make you feel a positive emotion, which is where that gets misused in a lot of the sort of pop psychology that I've seen.
You're saying that pop psychology can be inaccurate? TikTok videos don't tell the truth all the time?
Yeah, I know it's bewildering, but if you can believe it, if you can believe it. And that is a dangerous use of affirmation, because if I'm just trying to spin up some positive emotions that have no grounding in anything that's true or real, I'm just creating a nice little delusion for myself that I can live inside. And that is not moving toward health.
Yeah. Another context where I think about affirmation is, and you'll see this a lot, nobody in this practice will identify as cause affirming or values affirming therapist, because again, we've defined affirmation as saying, I believe X to be true. And we have diverse clientele. And as soon as we start disclosing too much of who we are as clinicians, that could get in the way of a working relationship. I want to see Republicans, Democrats, straight, gay, otherwise inclined. I want to see everybody. And so what we wear publicly is we serve everyone. That doesn't mean we're going to agree with all of the values that our clients have all the time. It's also not necessary that we agree with all of the values that our clients have every time, because affirmation is not an essential ingredient in meaningful, satisfying relationships in all areas. Of course, you're going to have some things in common. You're going to be able to say, oh, me too. I totally believe that. Or I see that very similarly. Or, oh, yes, I also believe that about you. Oh, thank you. I think that's true about me as well. And there's plenty of moments in meaningful relationship where somebody's challenging us, or where we realize we are going to have to agree to disagree in a respectful manner on this one.
And what if the person on the receiving end of that feedback is saying, well, I think that you're attacking me right now. That's what I'm affirming.
I've seen that once or twice online.
Once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So am I supposed to just say, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm totally attacking you.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a bigot.
Right.
I'm
evil. A horrible person.
Yeah. No, like you just see it differently than they do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I told you a truth.
The example I give here is, let's take 3 of the most well-known faiths. Christians say Jesus is the Son of God. Muslims say that Jesus was a prophet. And Jewish people will say that Jesus was a teacher. Well, there's core fundamental disagreements there. They all can't be true. Either none of them is true, or one of them is true, or a combination, but not all 3 can be true to all 3 groups at the same time. Christians can say, oh yeah, he was a teacher and the Son of God. They wouldn't really call him a prophet, right? Muslims certainly wouldn't call him the Son of God. They would call him a prophet. And the Jewish people definitely wouldn't call him the Son of God or the Messiah. Those are 3 people groups where that's just an example. You're not going to agree on everything. And that's where understanding comes in when affirmation is not honest.
It's a really important point to make. Understanding and affirmation are not synonyms, and that we can engage in one of those without necessarily engaging in the other. And I wonder if that gets lost some in our current culture.
Oh, very commonly. You don't vote the way somebody votes, or you worship differently. You don't share sexual values across the board. You don't value the same characteristics when it comes to things like sexual orientation or identity, right? There's loads of differences between people. And we as therapists, we're pretty fortunate to see that really strong relationships can form even between people who are very different from one another.
That's a great example of how empathy is the very thing that preserves connection and relationship, whereas affirmation is not necessary across the board. Because if that is my standard and if that's what I'm demanding in relationship, what I'm also saying is I don't value your autonomy. I think that you should just be exactly how I want you to be. That's control. That's not connection. That's not relationship. Relationship is being able to stay connected and caring toward one another, even in spite of those differences, where sometimes, yes, I'm going to affirm the same things, but I can always empathize and seek to understand.
One of the things I try to do with couples in a similar situation is help them see that in this moment of conflict, there is a truth that's going on there. I think one thing, I think another thing. But the larger truth of this relationship is we still want to maintain connection, even in this place of disagreement. And how can we step back and remember the larger truth that both of us agree on, the larger affirmation? Oh yeah, we still want to love each other and care for each other, even if we're going to disagree over this smaller thing. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah. That whole Gottman dreams and conflict thing that makes me think of, yeah.
It also makes me think of one of my heroes in this field, Murray Bowen, who talked a lot about what he called differentiation of self. And Seth, what I hear you describing, and Perry, to pick up on the theme that you're talking about as well, if I'm a well-differentiated person, I'm able to be who I am and hold to my core and still be in close relationship with someone who may be different from me. And so there's that differentiation. Here's where I stop. Here's where you start. And it keeps us from finding ourselves in a codependent relationship. It also keeps my integrity. I'm able to consistently be myself without cutting off significant relationships in order to do that.
It's also what allows us to live outside of an echo chamber.
Yes.
If you are not highly differentiated, you're probably surrounding yourself with people who will affirm just about every take you have.
Right.
They will.
Feels good for a while.
It feels good for a while.
Yes. That feels good for a while. It's not sustainable. Either you're going to find some point that you don't agree on, or you will just continue to lie to one another. Neither of those sound like good options to me.
And that can lead to the positive cognitive distortion we were talking about earlier. I now believe that I am wise and right on all of this stuff, even when I've now ventured into maybe some harmful territories.
Yeah. And then people wonder, why can I sit in a room full of people and feel so alone? Why do I feel so disconnected? Why do I feel so empty? It's like, well, you're not really letting yourself be sharpened by differences.
Yeah, it's a real good way to get stuck. Is to make sure you're spending a lot of your time, if not all of your time, in an echo chamber around people who will never challenge you to think differently or do differently.
It's a recipe for stagnation.
I mentioned Murray Bowen earlier, and David Schnarch, who is well known in our field for applying a lot of Bowen's concepts. He called this the reflected sense of self, where I get my sense of worth and value, those things you were talking about a few moments ago, Perry. I get those things fully from you reflecting your agreement and your affirmation back to me. I'm dependent on that for my sense of self. And if it's not obvious, Schnarch's point was we don't want to find our value solely in a reflected way, that we need to have an internalized sense of that.
Now, what affirmation is wonderful in doing is it does help form a perspective of ourselves. And there's something called the Michelangelo phenomenon, when partners affirm each other's good traits, their positive characteristics. They tend to embody those things more. So you hear from your partner, like, you're such a hard worker. You're so kind. And when you start to hear that, okay, well, let me make that as true as I possibly can make that. And of course, there's a role that challenge plays in helping us become a better person as well. But affirmation is really associated with this Michelangelo phenomenon. And think about Michelangelo, the sculptor, chipping away at all of those negative things. Mm-hmm. This is a way of affirming the qualities that you really like in your partner. Or obviously this works for other relationships, friends, colleagues, coworkers. Affirm those qualities that are truly good, truly desirable. And it plays a role in how strong of a characteristic that is in that person.
Where that made my mind go was toward childhood development and the parent-child relationship. So if you think about it in the negative sense, if a parent is affirming over and over, you are an inconvenience, or you're not worth my time, or I don't value you, or I only value you when you perform as I want you to. That child is internalizing those things as they're chipping away at their own sense of self and building that. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you see kids who, when they do grow up with those truthful affirmations of their value and worth, they start to build this courage and this sense of stability in themselves. And you can sense that when you're around them, because they're confident that I always have this place of love that I can go back to. I have this sense of value that I can come back to, whereas that is really shaky in people that haven't had that feedback. So it shows how we are shaped as people in relationship. Our actions, our words, they're not without impact.
Yeah, what you're describing is the Pygmalion effect. When I have a higher expectation of someone, then they tend to live up to that expectation. That theory is often used in education. When we set higher standards for the children, they can match those standards. When a teacher has a lower standard for children, the children match those standards. So part of the affirmation is not just who you are right now, but what you're capable of doing. That's part of that growth that gets us out of stagnation that we're talking about before.
So one of the things you will not catch me saying to anyone, and especially a kid, is you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. No. I say, you can do whatever you're capable of doing. You're capable of doing wonderful things. That's true. Because again, an affirmation is founded in truth. I'm 6'6.5". I could not be a Kentucky Derby winning jockey. No owner would have hired me to ride their horse.
Have you considered amputation?
Yeah. I'd be the only jockey with no legs, right? Like, I'm too large of a human being. So no matter how much I love horses, and I did love horses as a kid, there was no world where it would have been an affirming statement when we're understanding that affirming means true to say, hey, giant teenager, you can be a Kentucky Derby winning jockey. It just wasn't going to happen. Now, I needed to have a grasp of what was in my capabilities, what is true about me, and that helps build confidence. Confidence isn't thinking you have no flaws. Confidence isn't this la-la land where you have no downside and have never made a mistake. Confidence is knowing what you're capable of. And that is oftentimes shown to us before we have learned it on our own.
We keep talking about the importance of truth and those compliments that we give to people in our lives, those affirming statements, how those need to be true. When we think about that in the context of a marriage, there are many opportunities throughout my interactions with my partner to notice, to comment on, to affirm positive truths about her. And what we know from Gottman's research on this is that couples who have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions, they tend to have an overall positive sentiment in their relationship, meaning they're more likely to give the benefit of the doubt to their partner, give grace to their partner. Couples who have an overall negative sentiment, that ratio is much lower, 0.8 to 1, I think, is what I've seen there. And that's when they're in conflict. Gottman talked about a group of couples that he called the masters, the couples who were really doing relationship well. And when they weren't in conflict, that ratio was more like 20 to 1. So even in conflict, and that's so important as we talk about affirmation, here we are in conflict, we disagree, we don't see this the same way. Can we still keep our ratio of positive to negative at least 5 to 1? That makes a tremendous difference in our relationship.
This episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is sponsored by the Sex Test by Sex Life Science. The Sex Test is an anonymous, low-cost, fun, thorough, and entertaining tool designed to give people detailed information about their sexual likes and dislikes, their sexual values, and their expectations for their partner. When partners share their results with one another, they are shown a list of each of their sexual preferences. In other words, they have a bedroom cheat sheet they can use to try to enhance their sex life together. To learn more about the Sex Test, visit www.sexlifescience.com. All right, so affirmations need to be true. When you're in a satisfied relationship, these positive affirmations, they're coming at you at least a 5 to 1 ratio in something like conflict, but also outside of conflict, 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 20 to 1. In the context of a sexual relationship, we know that affirmation plays an important role in determining sexual satisfaction. There's robust evidence showing that open sexual communication is linked to happier sex lives in relationship. We know that beneficial sexual communication is highly positive. It's not just a list of don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. It's I really like it when you do this. Oh my gosh, it meant so much when I heard you say that. Oh wow, I feel so emotionally connected, and connecting with you sexually in this moment is just so powerful. So it's these statements that are statements of truth that let your partner know, not only am I in love with you, am I attracted to you, am I committed to you, but I also want to have sex with you, and I'm enjoying that sex with you. So when we think about affirmations that increase romance, passion, and sexual satisfaction, how can we learn that? How do we teach that to clients? How do we develop that? It really is a skill set. How do we go about learning how to do that well?
One of the ways to grow your sexual affirmation skill set is to have a shared vocabulary. You want to be able to say the words that you are intending to communicate, and the other person hear what you're intending to communicate, and not something else that they understand that word in a very different way, in a very different context. You may say one word that, hey, that's a fine word to me, and the other person hears that and it's gross, or it's disgusting, or it's bad, or it's something, and means something completely different. And so having that shared vocabulary and that shared understanding is one of the ways to build towards better communication that leads to higher sexual satisfaction.
I also think about how might I know that my partner perceives this as gross or bad. And the more I know about my partner's life, the more I know of my partner's story, my partner's family of origin experiences, the more likely I am to have an understanding and appreciation for how my partner is likely to respond, and vice versa. So this is always important. Right now we're talking about in the area of sexuality, but in really any area of a relationship, having a knowledge and appreciation for your partner's background. And that only happens through sharing, through having those conversations. Here's what it was like growing up. What was it like for you?
Yeah, we have that section of the Sex Test that allows people to identify their preferred words and terms. And I added that because when I was learning how to be a therapist in general and learning how to be a therapist who provides sex therapy in particular, I learned about the power of words. And words that mean something to person A don't mean that something to person B necessarily. When you look at the data, and you could go to sexlifescience.com and look at the anonymous test results of everybody. So you can see the grouped results. In other words, you're not going to be identifying, oh, there's Jane Doe's results there, right? But you look at these words and you're going to see that these words, one, they're not 100% used by everybody. There's a diversity of terms, and you will probably find words that really resonate with you and some that really grate against you. I have been doing this long enough as a therapist where I have learned I can't really reliably predict what somebody's words are going to be. People come in and they fit a stereotype where you think they're going to be really using a set of words, and they just flip that script, and they are on the opposite end of that spectrum. But when you have these discussions, Dave, and you're talking about getting the story behind the meaning of a word, you might find that your own experience with that word changes or evolves. I remember providing sex therapy and hearing clients use their words, because again, they're not coming in here with scientific terms. They're not saying like, we want to talk about our coital intercourse relationship, right? They're saying we want to talk about sex, or they're describing their body parts using slang terms. And they started to use words that were on my personal no-go list. And I'm like, ooh, ugh, that was a little harsh or gross or funny even. And then I started to get to know these people. And some of these words in my 18 years of doing therapy have evolved for me. Now have a positive connotation because I have had enough conversations with people where I've learned, oh, you know what? I get it now. Oh, that's like a fun, intense word, not an offensive word. And maybe you go the other direction too. I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong way here, but getting the story that gives the meaning to the word. Because once you establish this shared sexual vocabulary, now you and your partner can really enhance the sexual relationship by accurately communicating, and then communicating in ways that are appealing to one another.
Part of establishing that shared vocabulary is not only establishing what those words are, but also what sort of emotions are attached to those words, what sort of physiological sensations. So there has to be a respect for the vulnerability of sex and an attunement to your partner and what is going on with them on a physiological and emotional level, not just a cognitive or language level, because there's so much more to that communication, especially when it comes to sex.
And yourself. I mean, lots of us don't start off really comfortable with the discussion of sex. It is one where physiologically you're feeling very rigid, very tight, hyperventilating even, very uncomfortable. How do we get comfortable talking about sex if we're not currently there?
Well, coming back to affirmations, it's signaling to your partner, this is safe to talk about. I'm not going to take advantage of any information that you're sharing with me. I'm not going to use it to shame you. This is okay. And helping them to walk through those emotions, not in the sense that you're coddling them, but just letting them know I'm here for you. This is uncomfortable for me too. We can share this experience and just be uncomfortable together. You're not alone in that.
I'm not going to weaponize it.
Yeah.
Bring it up later, in an effort to win an argument.
Also, just practice. The experience of being able to talk to someone who is comfortable with these issues allows you to also become more comfortable with those issues. So practicing it with a therapist, practicing it with a mentor, practicing it with someone you trust can help you just become more comfortable and calm when talking about this issue.
I'll even say practice this by yourself on the way home.
Yeah.
If you're in the habit of calling sex it, for example, and you're stuck in traffic, sex. Okay, get to the point where you're just comfortable. So that's relaxing your muscles. How about some self-affirmations? I'm a sexual being. Sex is good. Sex is connecting. Sex with my partner is caring, passionate. I am capable of talking about sex comfortably. And you get there. And then you start throwing in your preferred words and terms. And I'm not prescriptive here. As long as the words are appealing, they enhance pleasure, there really isn't a right word. So if you want to say have sex or bang or, one of these other words. Yeah. So when you look at the top 4 words, there's words there that some people love and some people find offensive. Number 1 is various versions of having sex. I like to have sex. Do you want to have sex? Number 2, at 67% of respondents, is fuck. There's people who that's a turn on word, and then there's people where that is a turn off word. Make love comes in at 3, bang 4, get it on, go to bed with, get some, and so on and so forth.
And again, just to be clear, this is from our information from the Sex Life Science.
Exactly right. So this is hundreds of people who have taken this and said, these are the words I prefer to use in the context of describing the act of having sex. And we have that for all the various body parts and other aspects of sex. Nobody, in all likelihood, endorses all of them. But find your words with your partner that are going to be pleasure enhancing, experienced as mutually desirable, respectful. And then if that's still an uncomfortable conversation, slow, deep breathing, repetition of this. I really wasn't kidding about being stuck in traffic. That's probably a good time to start saying some of these words. And over time, if you're like the average person, you'll find yourself getting more and more comfortable with this. Because once you've seen it and heard it enough times, a lot of the stigma wears away. I think I maybe even shared this in the past, but I remember when my daughter was born. We had been working with a particular doctor during my wife's pregnancy. And lo and behold, the one we had been working with wasn't available when Piper was coming, right? So we're getting the on-call doctor. And we're like, oh, great. Who's this person going to be? And her name's Dr. Stork, by the way, which
wow.
I have nothing.
Talking about occupational alignment there.
I mean, unbelievable, right? And I have absolutely no bad words to say about Dr. Stork. She was awesome. But we're in this room. For anybody who's been in a labor and delivery room, my wife is nude, essentially, and open for the world to see, genitals just clearly visible. Not a context where a lot of people are used to being around strangers. And Dr. Stork comes in, meeting her for the first time. My wife's spread eagle on the labor and delivery room. And she just comes in, says, hey guys, nice to meet you. I'll be right in there. Takes a look at my wife's genitals from about 3 feet, says, oh, we got plenty of time. I'll be right back. And it was like oddly the most routine interaction that I'd ever observed. Like there was no stigma, no discomfort, no judgments. She'd been here thousands of times probably. She was so disarming. And that almost certainly came from her degree of comfort. She's been there before. We loved her. She was great. Anybody having a kid in Nashville, Dr. Stork, find her. She was fantastic. But that's what we're talking about here. Like you could gift yourself with that when it comes to having these conversations about sex.
When we avoid those conversations with sex, they tend to become taboo. And yes, taboos can be exciting and exhilarating, but they also tend to be anxiety ridden and things we want to avoid and we have to avoid. And it's dangerous if we don't avoid them. And if sex is become taboo, that is dangerous and anxiety ridden, it's really going to be hard to have that satisfying sexual relationship with your partner. That's why it's so important that we bring this out into the light of knowledge, the light of talking about, the light of practice, just allows you to be more comfortable with it so it doesn't have to bring up that anxiety and that feeling of danger.
So we know that getting comfortable with these discussions about sex is important. It's also important switching context, different relationship context. We talked about affirming your child's self-worth earlier. We talked about helping them develop a sense of confidence. There's a lot of parents who come in and they really struggle to have the conversations about their kids' emotions and what their kid is feeling. And what role does affirmation play there?
I think of co-regulation, which is a word you hear a lot in attachment research. And what that means is that a child learns to regulate their emotions in the context of relationship. That's not something they just come into the world organically being able to do. And so a parent's ability to affirm what their child is feeling, in other words, tell them the truth about what that feeling is, because the child won't have that information, and then to help them to walk through those sensations and learn, here are the helpful things to do with that emotion, here are the unhelpful things. That provides that structure for the child to then later on in life be able to make those decisions for themselves.
If parents want to learn how to do that well, I highly suggest Daniel Tiger. Throughout Daniel Tiger series, they're constantly showing parents that affirm what the children are feeling, helping them label it, and then the children being able to process that and move forward through it.
An example I often use with clients is, think about a kid who they're experiencing a thunderstorm for the first time. Mm-hmm. They have this huge, overwhelming sensation in their body. They don't know what that is. And it might feel like, am I going to die? What's going on? I just feel all of this physiological intensity. What is this? And so the parent co-regulating in that moment looks like coming to their child saying, what does that feel like? This looks like it might be fear. I think that you're afraid right now. Here's what we can do to make it through that feeling. Maybe the parent provides soothing. Depending on the age of the child, the mom might rock the child, hug the child,
that
pat
won't
them
go
on the
well
back.
with the 18-year-old.
Right, right. Yeah, so age is a factor for sure. But yeah, so an aspect of that is the direct soothing to the child, but also what the parent models. So if a child sees their parent dealing with stress and emotions in harmful ways, but then they're trying to model something or say something different to the child, that's not really going to go very well. It's going to be confusing. So a helpful way to model that to the child would be to say, you know, when I feel really scared like that, this is what I do that helps me to calm down. Like maybe I wrap myself in a blanket, or I talk to a friend, or maybe I take some deep breaths and remind myself that I'm okay and I find a safe place, whatever it is in the context.
An affirmation plays such a powerful role when parents are teaching their kids how to develop an emotional vocabulary. I know I am not the only parent in this room to have lost his temper. Dave, have you lost your temper? Seth?
I have, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah. I have lost.
Once or twice.
Yeah. I have lost my temper in life, and I've lost it with kids. Now, that has looked like yelling. My voice has gotten too loud. And I need to affirm, speak as truth. I lost my temper.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy needs to apologize because I spoke too loudly. I didn't control my temper, and I'm sorry. Now, we are not going to perfectly identify another person's emotions. So when you are talking to your kid, it looks like you might be scared. Are you scared? Are you stressed? Are you concerned? Ask a series of questions, a series of emotions, because kids do respond not always truthfully to leading questions, right? But what you're also doing is your kids know when you've lost your temper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't affirm their experience there, they're going to know that you're not telling the truth or you're not expressing honesty to them. And that impacts things like trust.
Right.
And connection and intimacy. So affirmation really plays a powerful role in reinforcing that bond between parents and kids, but helping the kids develop an emotional vocabulary.
Yeah. And attachment research would support what you just said, that the security of the relationship hinges more on the parent's ability to repair after a rupture and attachment than on the parent's perfect conduct.
Yeah, because none of us is perfect.
Exactly. And if I'm trying to cover up my mistakes as a parent and affirming something that is not, in fact, the case, that creates that confusion, that cognitive dissonance for the child. So being able to show them, here's what it looks like to own up to your mistake and how we can stay connected. This doesn't have to mean that we fall apart.
Yeah. Or you could really just be saying, you know what, Daddy is sad right now.
Right.
Mommy is sad. Daddy is scared. Daddy is concerned. And obviously this works positively too. Daddy's so proud. You're giving them the opportunity to see that emotion modeled.
Right.
And they're learning, oh, this word goes with that type of, oh, interesting. Okay. And they will absorb that.
And I see so many clients that come in telling me I wasn't allowed to feel this emotion when I was young. I wasn't allowed to express this feeling. And so part of the work that we do is now helping them to understand those emotions and those feelings and express them well where they've been repressed or held back for so long. Or another emotion has taken its place, like anger.
Yeah. Or unnamed.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know what I'm feeling.
Yeah. That's where you see anger show up a lot because it's a mask that can catch a lot of emotions that feels like, oh, I'm in control. I have this together. When there's a lot of messy stuff going on inside that I just don't have the words to even deal with.
Yeah.
And now here we are talking about family of origin experience again, which we were talking about earlier in terms of its impact on your sex life. It has an impact on so many significant areas of life, including obviously how you parent. And a question I'm regularly exploring with my clients is, what is it that you learned to do to survive in your relationships growing up? In all likelihood, when the stress gets high enough in life, we're doing those things again. And so part of the work is gaining insight into what is it I learned to do? How might I be repeating those things, perhaps in my own parenting, for example? But beyond the insight, how do I then take that information, that new understanding, and turn and now do something differently for my own benefit and for the benefit of my children? And maybe that begins by using a self-affirmation like, I can break the cycle. I can do differently.
Today's episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is brought to you by the Briggs Institute, Incorporated. The Institute is an individual, couple, and family therapy private practice in Nashville, Tennessee. For more information, visit the Institute's website at www.thebriggsinstitute.com. What do you want people to remember about today's episode?
I want people to remember the importance of knowing the truth and affirming the truth.
We want to affirm what is true.
Yes.
We don't want to look like we're affirming something, but what we're really doing is reinforcing maybe harmful behavior or a false belief.
Or even just avoiding a difficult conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Thanks. Fake affirmation. Right.
To build on that, I want people to remember that the truth matters and that your stability is directly correlated with your alignment with it and alignment with reality. The way that you weather the storms in your life is by finding the truth and being able to come back to that home base.
I want people to remember that this idea of self-affirmation can be very powerful. I know it gets a bad rap, as I mentioned earlier, with SNL and Stuart Smalley, but I'm a big fan of developing our self-leadership. And that's one of the ways we can do that as long as we're making sure to affirm the truth.
I want people to remember that there's a difference between needing an affirmation to feel a strong sense of self-worth. That's a problem because you're now putting your self-worth in the hands of another. We call that an external locus of control over your self-worth. That is a problem. But it's very different than needing affirmation in order to be satisfied with your relationship. It's okay to let a partner know, I need to hear this to feel connected to you. I need to know that you love me, that you feel connected to me, that you feel attracted to me in order for this relationship to be as satisfying as it could be. So that's advocating for a relationship need, which is different than seeking a self-worth need to be met in somebody else. That's a real important distinction because it allows you to be a whole person while advocating for what we know leads to the most satisfying relationships, which for many people includes hearing those words of affirmation and then giving those words of affirmation to your partner. Nice job, everybody. This is fun.
Thank you.
First recorded in the new recording space. So
Whoop, whoop.
you guys were the maiden voyage. So awesome. Thank you.
Who has the champagne bottle?